Hello guys and girls, on this video I'm going to be talking about the latest episode of Lovecraft Country, Season 1, Episode 9. It is called Rewind 1921. Sort of sounds like something they might say on a pop documentary or something like that, but as you can guess, they're doing the whole time travel thing again. So there's that. So the setup to the episode is basically that after the events of last week, which happened to Dee, she has collapsed and gone into a coma. So the group talked to Christina, and she says she can help her. She can save her with a spell, with I think she calls it a reformation spell, something like that. But there's kind of this catch, because of course there is with Christina, where she basically says, well, Atticus needs to agree to let me use his blood for the whole Garden of Eden project. I also need like the pages, which of course she already has, which let her have some, to give her like immunity. So that all comes out in the open, the deal that Yeti made last week with her, Letitia. So there's Montrose goes berserk over that. There's this whole deal where Letitia has to explain, well, the reason I did it is because I'm pregnant with Atticus's child, and I wanted to protect the child from what's going to happen, because especially if Atticus is going to die as predicted. This was partly influenced by Atticus coming back from the future with the book Lovecraft Country, which his son did, which was of course based on what's going to happen to his father and the whole event. So there's this really kind of meaty edge to the drama between the characters, where Montrose does lose it with Letitia. He's on the verge of almost strangling her. He's so sort of mad and feels betrayed. But yeah, there's various things they have to do to perform this spell to try and bring Dee back. One is that they have to get some blood from like someone who's already dead. Blood or DNA, I couldn't quite figure out which, but it's this quite dark scene where Ruby goes with Christina, and they find this, well, it's this dead body which Christina has stored, because of course she has all these corpses which she uses for like the whole body swap thing. Very sort of morbid, and Ruby obviously feels uneasy about this. It's this dead body, and what was a person, and they're taking stuff from it. And she just asks, how did she die, sort of thing, that kind of thing. But very sort of murky territory. But this is kind of the brilliance of the show, is that the characters sometimes are forced into going along with stuff which they don't necessarily agree with, or they have to do something a bit murky and just creepy to sort of do something good for someone they love. And I think that's the way you sort of have to think about it, is that in this example, this is all part of saving Dee's life, and Dee is this young person with her whole life ahead of her, whereas this woman is already dead. I mean, obviously there's something messed up about, taking something from her after she's dead, but even so, it's one of those things. And there's quite an interesting like exchange between Ruby and Yeti before Ruby goes with Christina, because Ruby is kind of defending Christina to Letitia, she's kind of saying, well, don't forget this is the woman who's helping us, that she saved our lives, sort of thing. And Yeti has to point out to Ruby, hey, look at some of her history. And Ruby makes the distinction that, well, it was her brother, basically, and her family who did the damage to you the rest. And obviously it was, Christina in the body, but whatever. It seems like splitting hair. So I think they're maybe suggesting that Ruby kind of does have feelings for Christina, and that sort of clouded her judgment a little bit. So a little naive on Ruby's part, I think, there. But obviously they kind of have to trust Christina with this, just because obviously they want to save D. The other thing which happens, which is quite empowering, is that Christina finally sticks it to the cop, the racist sort of cop who put the original curse on D, and because they need him as part of like the spell sort of thing, because he was the one who put the spell on her. Yeah, she basically gets to kill him and take his blood, and it's really glorious, because there's a bit where he's basically dying and Christina has transformed back into the body of William, and she shows up there and they think it's William, and it's basically Christina, and she's just gone there to watch him die, which is kind of glorious. You certainly can't, because we hate this character so much. You sort of, you're with Christina in that moment. But Christina as a character, I think it's an example of this show doing this stuff really well, because for a villain, she's turned out to be really sort of multi-layered in some ways, and she's another little gem of a support character who you thought might just be very straightforward, very black and white, excuse the pun, but considering what the show is and the way her character was set up, there's actually been a bit more to it, and there's some directions the character has taken which you really couldn't predict. Although she's done some really messed up, sinister things, I think there are certain sympathies that you do have with her, and obviously I think there's been an element of doubt whether you can trust her or not. I think it's not as clear cut as you might think. I think there's enough to it where you think, well, maybe she does want to do the right thing. Maybe she has been kind of forced into these actions or coerced or maybe given little choice, but I think there's an element of doubt anyway. You might strongly come down on the side of, yeah, she's messed up and she shouldn't be doing this stuff no matter her reasons, but there's still an element of doubt. It's still quite murky, I think. Now, I will say, I think it shows the skill of the writing of this show, exactly how things pay off when they go to the future, because, or the past, I should say, because the whole point is that to complete the spell, they have to go and get the pages of the book from Atticus's family in the past. Well, Montrose / Atticus's family. Because I think it was Atticus's grandma who's got the pages, sort of thing. So they have to go to Tulsa in 1921, and so Tick, Yeti, and Montrose all go. And actually, before I make that point, Hippolyta returns in this episode, and this is another glorious side to this, because she obviously has to help them save Dee, her daughter. So this gives her motivation too. Um, so Hippolyta now understands time travel. She now knows how to work the machine and stuff. So she becomes like this ringleader sort of figure where she actually lays out a plan of exactly what they're gonna do, and she knows she has power over this machine. She now has these special sort of powers. And it's glorious to see because obviously, the episode 2 episodes ago where they did the whole 2001 thing with her was kind of amazing and trippy and just insane, threw you for a loop literally. But now the way they've paid that off and the way she's returned, it's sort of great to see, and it's given her this sort of key central role which you never expected her to have. And again, I think it's a good example of the way this series has paid off its characters, like given them a setup and then paid it off, because I think I said this before in a review, but Hippolyta at the beginning was this minor character, and there was something quite tragic about the fact that, she was left behind when George went on this adventure, and there was this sadness where George felt he couldn't take her, but said, I promise you I'll take you on the next adventure, and then obviously George ended up dying, but there was this whole sadness, and they were obviously making a point about, a woman kind of being left at home by the man sort of thing, her not being allowed to have the adventure type thing. So having gone from that and then paying that off in such a fantastic way, it sort of shows you that even with characters that appear to be like supporting minor parts, this show really does some incredible things. And the special effects in this episode are really, really great when you see Hippolyta trying to keep like the portal open so that the three of them can go, because there's this back and forth where she's struggling to keep it open, almost like a force field, and it's taking like energy and stuff out of her to try and keep this thing open. Um, and and then later on a similar thing, like at one point, it kind of opens and Atticus comes through, but then it sort of closes before Montrose and Letitia can get back, but then she has to try and reopen it. And there's this great shot of, it being open and they can see like the city on the other side. And then later when Montrose is still there, like he's looking through the portal at them in the present from Tulsa in 1921. So there's some really great stuff visually in the episode. And then when they get to Tulsa, again, this show has done like the period detail really, really well from the first episode onwards. So there's some really great money, really well spent in that sense. But the point I was going to make before is that just when you maybe think there might be one or two clunky plot points creeping in, because one of the things that happens is before they set off on this mission, Montrose comes clean to Tick that George might actually be his father. And to be honest, I'd forgotten about this. Well, I hadn't forgotten, but it sort of didn't dawn on me. I'd forgotten that Tick didn't know, actually, because obviously it was a thing between George and Montrose. But in any case, it's this big dramatic moment where Atticus is really mad. And it's right before they go on the journey, before they go on the time travel trip to Tulsa. So when it first happened, my sort of feelings were, well, are they really doing this now? And I think my concern was that it might just add this sort of added kind of forced drama that we didn't need. Right now, it seems, we're all the way to episode 9. Do they really need to do this now? Is the drama kind of gonna drag the plot down a bit? But later on, it actually makes perfect sense that they do it in that episode. And the reason is because all this family stuff comes up in the past. They're right there, and they obviously have to go to the house, and there's all these different emotional beats going on with the family. And they kind of go full hog with the whole time travel thing and the rules that are set up and the rules that you've seen set up in like movies like Back to the Future and stuff. So, first of all, they have to watch actually as because you've got like the two families like living next door to each other, and you obviously have George and Montrose obviously as young boys, and so at one point there's this fight between them and like I think it's like the son of the family next door, and it's because they're um because she's gonna she wants to date sort of thing, and there's like a white sort of head of the family type thing, and basically like he has to like stick up for him and sort of say, well, you deal with your children how you see fit, but don't I'll sort out my children sort of thing. And obviously the girl in question, the young girl, is Atticus's mum, so he sees his mum as a really youngster. Um, and then like I can't I'm getting all these characters confused, but I think it's the sister where she kind of says you, or is it? It might be. It's probably Atticus's mum actually says to like George, you should stick up for your brother more than that. You should stick up for Montrose because the dad is basically like giving him a beating sort of thing. Um, but yeah, the dad is really abusive. We sort of see that from these shots. And Montrose is watching this, the adult Montrose, and he says, "Well, no, that's not fair. He actually stuck up for me lots, just in small ways. It's not necessarily in confrontational ways, but he did defend me and stand up for me a lot. So that's really interesting and emotional. And you get these scenes throughout Montrose, because what happens is Montrose disappears, and Letitia and Tick immediately jump to, oh my god, he's gonna try and change the events of time, and they think he's gonna go to the family home and get involved there. But what actually happens is he disappears and they can't find him. So Letitia says, I'll go try and get the pages from the book. And you find Montrose basically. So Tick goes off to find Montrose, and I mean, what makes this whole section so dark and so kind of sinister in some ways is just the fact that they know what's coming. They know there's going to be this fire at the house because that's how everybody like dies, and this is sort of history, and it's the most tragic thing because they know they can't mess with the events of history because of the effect it can have on the future. And they know that they're there basically to save D, and I guess anything that they do to change history could maybe put hamper that mission. So it's basically this principle that no matter how tragic it is and the temptation is there, the emotional sort of desires there because these people are connected to them. They just can't do it. Um, so there's this situation coming where these basically racists are going to show up and they're going to like set the fire and they're going to start shooting at like the black family. Um, so what happens is Tick goes off to try and find Montrose, and as it turns out, Montrose is trying to prevent something else. He's on the other side of town, and he's now watching himself as a young boy, and this we find out this is kind of when he was first coming out and experimenting with obviously his true self, his homosexual identity, because he'd started this relationship with this other guy, but because of the way things were and the way his family were and the whole pressure, he couldn't really go through with it. So Montrose is watching this exchange at this like location, and he's basically saying, I called him, and I won't say the word, but like a harsh word for a homosexual, and basically he just told him this to end the relationship, just because he felt it was better for the two of them that they would never be allowed to be alone. And he basically said, "Yeah, I'm not like that." And it's obviously a regret Montrose has all these years later. But what's going to happen is that this boy who Montrose had the relationship with, he's going to get caught in the crosshairs of this thing, and it's this kind of act Montrose has where he sort of, because he deserts him, it leads to this boy getting killed. So what happens is Montrose says, you can't do that sort of thing. But then there's been this premonition that someone steps in, a mystery person actually saves him, and that mystery person is Atticus. He comes and he breaks up the fight or gets involved in the fight and basically saves the kids. So there's that whole heavy stuff going on, and at the same time across town, Letitia goes to try and get the pages of the book, and she gets caught in the crosshairs of like, she's like hassled by the initial like group who are gonna like start be part of the riots, so she has to run, and she's then taken in by like Montrose and Atticus's family. Um, so they're like developing this whole counter thing to try and counter the racists, and she has to try and tell them, well, there's like this planned attack sort of thing. There's like a group of them, but she can't tell them too much because it would be like warning them and sort of altering time. So a group of like the males kind of go off, and the plan is to obviously meet the threat before they attack the house. So then what happens is she goes off on her own looking for like the pages that she needs because she knows they're in the house. And then the grandmother figure catches her. She's like, well, what are you doing snooping around? What's going on here? And she basically doesn't trust her. And so, Letitia then has to tell her what's going on, has to tell her she's from the future and warns her what's coming. But the grandmother's saying, well, tell me what's going to happen. And Letitia said, sorry, I can't, because it alters the future. I can't tell you your future. And it obviously takes some convincing that what she's saying is true, but she kind of proves it by telling her little things that only someone from like the future would know. So she eventually convinces her, and the grandmother says, well, this is important stuff. Yeah, I'll give you the pages. And it's again this bizarre, conflicting emotional sequence where Letitia stays with the grandmother as the flames come up, and obviously Letitia has like immortality, so she's kind of spared it. She can stay there. So it's this really powerful emotional moment between her and the grandmother where she kind of has to watch the grandmother die, but there's like this understanding between them. It's like really powerful stuff. And again, I think they do a great job with the visuals of the flames coming through the house and the two of them there, and it's yeah, really great stuff. So obviously she gets the pages that they need, and they eventually all come back. I mean, I think it plays with the ideas that Montrose might want to stay behind, that there's just something about he wants to make things right, um, or change things in a certain way, but just that he's conflicted. I mean, obviously it would be very strange for him now as an adult to kind of be back there with his past self sort of thing, and be in the past when he essentially has grown up and stuff. But obviously in the end he does come back and with them, but it's this whole dramatic thing, and that's kind of the end of the episode. So again, the stuff in the future was really great, just the drama of it and the emotion and the way they handle it. But again, it all lands on an effect sort of scale. So they balance all these different things so well. So another really strong episode, and we've only got one more left now, so episode 10. But here's hoping for a season 2, because I think there's a lot of things they could do in a season 2. I think stuff with Dee, I think she could become a bigger character, and yeah, they could do more with Hippolyta. We'll see what happens with her character. But I think because of the anthology feel of it, where most episodes sort of work as standalones, I think there is material here for a season 2. But I would be up for it. I would be up for like 2 or 3 seasons of this at least. Obviously, they would have to like divert from the book, but yeah, they can do that. But exciting stuff. I think this has been really the television event of the year, and there's not really been that much competition for it. So that's episode 9 of Lovecraft Country. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you are new to the channel. Also look out for more new television reviews. I've been slowly making my way through The Haunting of Bly Manor, so I'll have another review of that to come. Also, I'm going to be doing Star Trek Discovery Season 3, which just started this week, so look out for my first review of that. But thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.